This is Michael Woodward, and this is Season 2, Episode 73 of the Jumblethink Podcast.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Jumblethink Podcast, where we interview leading entrepreneurs about their journey of turning dreams and ideas into reality. Along the way, they'll give you tips on how you can turn your dreams and ideas into reality too. Our guest on today's episode is Ronan Leonard. More about Ronan in a moment. If you haven't already, I want to encourage you to go on over and subscribe to the Jumblethink Podcast. It's easy to do. Go to your favorite place to listen to podcasts and search for Jumblethink. If you like listening on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, we've made it easier. Simply go to jumblethink.com/iTunes or jumblethink.com/Spotify. It will take you right to the app, right where you can subscribe. While you're there, make sure you rate and review the Jumblethink Podcast. Let us know and let others know what you think of Jumblethink. Now let's jump into today's episode. Hey there, welcome to the Jumblethink Podcast. My name is Michael Woodward. I am your host, and we have an incredible episode lined up for you today. Before we get going, we want to thank today's sponsor, OpportunityInChina.com. Have you been looking for a way to change your career or social prospects? Do you see the world around you changing and haven't quite figured out what path to take? Well, you're not alone in seeking opportunity. Visit OpportunityInChina.com for access to scholarships to attend university in China. Or if you already have a bachelor's degree, OpportunityInChina.com provides access to jobs in the educational sector all across China. Working in China is not only well paid, but it will place you among 1/5 of the world's population, boosting your social network, bringing you more deeply into the story of globalization, opening doors you never knew existed. So seize your opportunity now. Visit their website, OpportunityInChina.com, to learn more. By the way, they have a killer podcast. Make sure to check it out. Go to wherever you like to listen to podcasts and search for Opportunity in China Podcast. Now let's join the conversation with Ronan Leonard. Our guest today is Ronan Leonard. He is doing some really cool stuff. He connects small business owners to support groups through the innovative concept of virtual masterminds. Without a co-founder or a business coach, solopreneurs are often overwhelmed with to-do lists. They feel isolated, and they need impartial advice to get the right support to help them achieve clarity and better results. Ronan, thanks so much for being on. I'm super excited about what you're doing. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Michael. Thanks for having me on the show. Looking forward to sort of diving into the whole concept of masterminds and just to giving some value to your guests on the show today.
Well, you are a big fan of masterminds. It's part of your heartbeat for what you're building, a big part of what you're doing through eCountability, which can be found at eCountability.io. Links in the episode notes too, so it's easy to find. But your story starts much further back. Tell us a little bit about your journey into entrepreneurship.
Mine was quite a circuitous route, to be totally honest. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I left school. I had no career plan, but I did know what I didn't want to do. And there were several jobs that I pretty much quit almost on the spot. I just realized it wasn't for me.
Wow.
I had this terrible job at 19 where I worked pretty much quasi-government job. And I looked around at all the people there that had zero ambition. And I said, if this is me in 10 years' time, shoot me. So I quit that job. I had another job working between Italy and Greece on more of a ferry than a cruise ship. And I worked on cruise ships afterwards. Same thing. I got a postcard from friends of mine, said, look, we're going to live in India for 5 months. We've rented this house. So again, I quit my job and left. And so for almost a decade, I traveled the world on cruise ships. And that gave me this whole sort of wanderlust of seeing the world and just knowing that there was more out there than just a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And then when I finally quit, I met my lovely wife on cruise ships and settled in Australia. And within a year or two, I sunk my life savings into starting my first business because, as I said, I just realized that working 9 to 5 just wasn't for me.
Well, we got to take a step back because people are, they hear you talk about cruise ships and working on a cruise ship, but you You've been through it on the cruise ships. You've seen the good parts of it, but you've also encountered a ship wreck where it actually went down, in the 90s, if I remember correctly?
Yes, I hadn't worked on ships for long, pretty much maybe 2 months, just a little bit longer. And the ship was off the coast of South Africa in the middle of winter, and it's called the Wild Coast. And it's not called the Wild Coast for nothing. It was really rough weather. And we just started taking on water, and all the lights went out and started sinking.
Wow.
So that was an incredible experience to survive. It was very, very dramatic sort of story, including the fact that the senior officers and the captain left us to us, abandoned the ship. If we filled one lifeboat with women and children, and on the other side, most of the senior officers left.
Wow.
So at the time I worked in the gift shop, one of the lowest paying jobs on the ship, and pretty much without very little training, I was there helping put people into lifeboats. Lucky enough, we sunk really slowly because it was quite a busy shipping lane, but nobody around could help us because of the weather so bad, middle of the night. But we sunk quite slowly, and first thing in the morning, some helicopters came from off the coast of South Africa and winched people off. So I helped people, to the helicopters, and got off about 2 hours before the ship actually sort of sunk. So yeah, it was a pretty wild and crazy time, and it gave me quite a few sort of life lessons about helping people and just what sort of came naturally to me. And because everyone survived, I was able to tell a lot of funny stories about the night and all these weird things that happened at the time, and I took it as a positive life lesson because I survived.
Wow. And there's video of it. We'll put that video link in the episode notes. It is. I watched it earlier today, and it was incredible to see that. And we think shipwrecks and stuff, but it was almost of Titanic proportion. Tail up in the air, going down in the water, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yeah. Out of that, you must have learned so much about what good leadership and bad leadership looks like. And that must have been really foundational for even what you're doing today in the world of masterminds and how you view leadership. So maybe can you tell us how that story, how that encounter with the shipwreck changed your perspective on leadership and helped you become the leader you wanted to be?
It's a good question. What it did teach me was to question authority a little bit more.
Okay.
I've always been known for that, and that really was because it doesn't matter what sort of stripes you got on your shoulder or what title you've been given, you still have to earn respect, and you still have to prove that. And you don't automatically defer to people just because they're higher authority. And it certainly helps you to question a lot of things. It becomes that point where you, as I said, you don't have that automatic default that you defer to someone, and you're able to sort of push back and say, well, even in business, why are we doing this? Or is there a better way? Or just because you're telling me I should do this. And I think that's another reason that I ended up, not wanting to work in corporations eventually, because I got tired of being, I suppose, told what to do. But yeah, definitely taught me to be a bit more curious and push back a bit more on people and question authority sometimes when people were saying do something without a really good explanation.
I love that because it's putting the responsibility on yourself. So often we try to do the blame game where we're saying, oh, it's their fault. They're the one that was leading and that kind of thing. But you're taking ownership to say, no, I have responsibility in this too. And part of leadership is realizing that just because you're not the head guy, you still are leading. There are people still following you. There are still people, in your case, very much depending on you to provide that safety or that mechanism to get them off that boat and into safety. When you're leading now, you're leading in a place of a group environment with masterminds and with entrepreneurs. How does a person really begin to ask the right questions? And what are the right questions for them to ask to say, this is the kind of leader I need to become for my business or for my vision or for my dreams?
I think it's twofold. When I teach people to run their own masterminds and teach them to unpick their intellectual property, because a lot of entrepreneurs, certainly the ones that are subject matter experts, tend to get stuck in this trap of just doing what they do and dismissing it so easily. and they often undervalue that.
Yeah.
So when you draw that out and they run their own masterminds, they unpick their own intellectual property. And one of the key things I often say to people, if not you, then who? So a lot of subject matter experts say, well, I'm not the one that can run my own masterminds and teach other people what I know. And there is that, if not you, then who? And that certainly applied to me on this ship without really thinking about it. If not you, then who? So if everybody freezes and nobody does anything, then we're doomed. So it doesn't matter what your title is, you can step forward and say, I'll do that. And I think that really sort of helps in that mastermind environment. And the second one is, you don't know what you don't know. And it sounds really, really corny, but in the world of technology we have and the amount of information we end up being overwhelmed with too much information, and we can't learn it all. So if you can plug into a mastermind group and have other people give you advice, support, I didn't know that, or you put that sounding board, that's a far quicker way to grow your business than thinking you can do it all by yourself.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I love both of those concepts. If not you, then who? And that you don't know what you don't know. Those are powerful concepts. Let's go into your journey of masterminding a little bit. We're going to talk more about good masterminds and everything like that. But let's first off talk about what is a mastermind. There's going to be some people listening that are like, I'm not quite sure what that means.
Sure. Well, the phrase has been coined by Napoleon Hill back from his Think and Grow Rich. And one of the best examples I can give you of mastermind doesn't really have anything to do with business. So if you've ever been to a gallery and seen a Renoir, Degas, Monet up there on the wall, those amazing paintings, worth billions today, that all started from a mastermind.
Okay.
So what happens is this cafe in Paris, they used to meet nightly and they would discuss the art, the concepts of what they were trying to do. They would share paint, they would share canvas, they would share ideas, and effectively all of them together created a whole new art revolution, which was the Impressionist movement. It didn't happen in isolation. There wasn't just one. There wasn't Monet saying, this is how art should look like. So they all came together and they created that. And they effectively picked each other's brains. As I said, they turned good ideas into great ideas. And they just shared those, as they shared those ideas and that intellectual property together, they came up with better solutions. So the concept is exactly like that, where you get into a virtual room, and you can do masterminds in person as well, and you just bounce around ideas that you're stuck on, and you share knowledge, and you come up with better ideas than you ever would have on your own.
I love that. That's the best way to describe a mastermind I've ever heard of, and I'm not familiar with that. I know all those artists, but I didn't know that was the backstory. That was in collaboration, that they really revolutionized the art world and took it to another level. That's so powerful. That's where that all started.
Yeah, we'd all like to be the next sort of billionaires from our mastermind, wouldn't we? And create a whole new art revolution. And it won't always happen, but certainly when you get a group of smart people in together that are willing to share, willing to help each other, you end up lifting the whole group, and you all end up learning and improving and growing. And it's still the same concept. So yes, I've just got a great backstory that ties it all in together because that is what I do day in and day out.
I love it. Love it. For you, you're on this journey, you're helping others, you're bringing entrepreneurs out of isolation to find a voice through collaboration. How are you personally finding purpose in what you do?
That's a good question. I started in masterminds quite late in life. It's not something that I actually did for a long time in my existing business. But when I did finally stumble across the concept, this light bulb moment went off for me, where for a decade in my previous business, I would come home and my only real sounding board was my wife. It's not, you can't talk about your deepest fears or struggles or doubts with your staff, if you have any. Your friends and family often don't understand if they're not in the small business entrepreneurial space. So where do you go? But conversely, you learn so much from everybody else just by even facilitating them that you get it. You understand that you have a big vision. They have different ways of doing things, and you can't help but learn just by even being in the groups that you understand that we all have the same fears, frustrations, and doubts. And for me, that's one of the biggest things. That fear, frustration, and doubt that we all have, and people that think that other people online that are crushing it or doing really well, and they think they've got all their life figured out, and they haven't. They've still got problems of getting to the next level or their uncertainty, and it's only by connecting with the people do you actually realize that we all have the same fundamental problems.
Love that. Okay, so speaking of challenges, we always ask this every episode as we wrap up the first segment. What is one challenge you're currently working to overcome in your own business?
That's a good one. I've just started the concept of teaching people how to run their own masterminds as well.
Right.
So I'm just figuring out the tech for my first webinar next week. So that's my biggest challenge right now.
And finally, what is the next big goal you have for your business?
Well, that would tie into that same one, is to build up the webinar where I teach subject matter experts to unpick their IP and package it all up and run their own masterminds where they're teaching people within their little niche how to do what they do.
Very, very cool. We will be back with Ronan and Leonard for our second segment as we go deeper into the world of masterminds, tribes, rituals, habits, and so much more. For many small business owners, entrepreneurs, and startup founders, they lack the resources or knowledge on how to build their first website to share their idea, dreams, and products to the world. When I started my first company, Woodward Design Group, we had a simple idea. We wanted to help our customers, whether a small business or a Fortune 100 company, build a custom website to reach their goals. And we built over 400 of those websites. We then also helped hundreds of others learn how to build their own website too. Now we're offering our first virtual live workshop where we can train you how to build a website in either a half day or full day. We'll make it easy, affordable, and quick to do. All you need to do is go over to jumblethink.com/teachme to learn more about our live virtual workshop on how to build your website in a day. By the way, at the end of the day, you'll have your first website built. So head on over to jumblethink.com/teachme to learn more about our virtual workshop coming up later in October and in early November. Now let's jump back into our interview with Ronan. We are back with Ronan and our second segment, and we're going to go so much deeper into masterminds, tribe, into rituals and habits and how they're significant. Before we dive in, Ronan, how can people find and connect with you?
One of the best places to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. So it's Ronan Leonard, or Ronan Leonard, the Mastermind Guy on LinkedIn. I post almost daily on there. So that's probably the best social media platform to connect with me.
Super cool. And we're going to dive into masterminds right here. You kind of laid a really beautiful picture of how masterminds work by sharing that story of the revolution in the arts and how that started in a collaborative space. First off, as an entrepreneur, I know that the journey can often be like very isolating and very alone. And we always talk about how we need coaches and how we need mentors and how we need consultants in that journey to help us. But masterminds is one that is just as powerful as a coach can be sometimes, especially ones that are led well, which is what you do incredibly well. Tell us about what makes a great mastermind and why, as an individual, as an entrepreneur, maybe even as a CEO, masterminds are something that you need to be looking at as part of your strategy.
The reason I believe they work so well is that you get to tap into not just one person. So there isn't the guru on the hill saying, follow me and I'll tell you exactly what to do. Mm-hmm. So you get to unpick often up to about eight people's brains. So Masterminds online, you don't need a big group. You can't run a big group because it gets too unwieldy. So around about sort of 6 to 8 maximum is a sweet spot. So they all come together, and because they come with no hidden agenda and no bias, every answer you get from somebody is genuinely trying to sort of help you with, often without that ego or that one sort of fixed opinion. So you do get multiple, but also you get multiple answers. You can have, you can ask a question out to a group, and 3 people say, well, I tried this, or I did that, or I think you should do this. So you do get the chance to get multiple viewpoints for the one thing. And I've seen, in our mastermind groups, I've seen people furiously, someone who hasn't contributed, they furiously write down an answer going, great, I can apply that. So effectively the knowledge swirls around that room, and it can be used by everybody. They can dismiss that and say, well, it's I like your opinion, but it's not quite right for me. So having that multiple viewpoint works, for a lot of people, works really well.
I was a part of a mastermind for several years when I was in Northern California, and when we had our big agency doing web dev and design, it was so critical for me to be a part of that mastermind. I in a lot of ways, I think that it was the solid foundation for where our business growth came from. Yeah, we were networking. Yes, we were working with different organizations and nonprofits and community groups that we were part of, and BNIs and groups like that. But for me, the growth really happened in masterminds. That's part of the reason why I got super excited when I connected with you, because I love the concept of masterminds. People are always trying to grow and do it on their own. And they have questions, and they're trying to search it out. And you were sharing just a moment ago about how the answer is probably in the room. And you get different perspectives, and you can filter through it and say, well, that's good, but that's not for me. What makes a mastermind really, really powerful from the standpoint of, if I'm coming into a mastermind, how can I find the right one for me? How can I find one that challenges me? Should it be with people that are in the same space as I work in, or should it be in opposing businesses? What does that look like when I'm looking for the right mastermind for me?
I think the right mastermind is the question I get asked all the time. And to be honest, there is no silver bullet. You've got to try a couple sometimes before you find the right one. Yeah. Same as a business coach. I don't think you necessarily find the first business coach is going to be the ideal one for you. You might hit lucky. You might not know without trying 2 or 3. Is this one great, or is this one just okay because I haven't tried a second one and realized that actually the other one's far better. So I do think you have to sort of try a few just to trial out, are you a good fit? Is there a good dynamic within the group, and is it right for me? Because we as humans, we bump along. Some people we get on really well and others not so much. So it's really a question of, I often call it, I've often taught the easy analogy where it's a little bit like going on a blind date. So 2 people will set somebody up and say they both think they're going to be a perfect match, and they get on the date and it's a disaster. And yet those people really well, and they still didn't gel. You thought they'd be the perfect match. So it's a little bit like that. I think you've got to just try a couple and see and find one that fits for you.
Another part of masterminds that is so important is the accountability aspect. Talk about how accountability can be used as a tool for us in business, because often we're trying to hold ourselves accountable. We're trying to create our own habits, our own patterns for success, but that accountability is like this key that unlocks so much more potential. So what is it about accountability and in masterminds that helps take good to great in a lot of cases?
Well, I think accountability is one of the key missing things as small business owners. We often leave the corporate world because we think we can do something better, or we don't like our boss, and then we go and start our own job, and that's great. We've got some value we want to give to the world, but unfortunately, the accountability which we had before in a structured environment where you reported somebody at the end of the week, or your KPIs, where you were told what to do, that goes out the window. And I think that's the crucial missing bit, is that we can all be either a great technician of what we do. So if you're a plumber and you want to go and grow your plumbing business, you go out on your own. But then all of a sudden you've got to work on the marketing and all the things that you don't like to do or somebody did before, until you reach that critical mass that you've got 4 or 5 plumbers on board and you then become the manager. And you just miss that other person to hold you accountable to do the hard stuff that you might not want to do. And I think that's where most businesses fail, if they don't put into place some kind of accountability mechanism and to work on the hard things, not the easy things. That's where businesses fail, because they just slip into what they know. They become that technician, that doer, and they stick in that comfort zone. And the things that scare them or worry them or they don't understand, if they don't get some kind of grasp on that, because business is incredibly complex, there are a lot of moving parts, and you can't be an expert at all of them, but you need to at least understand enough of them to outsource and to manage those. You lack that accountability, and that's where I see so many people failing.
Okay, so at the beginning of this segment, I talked about that we were going to talk a little bit about tribe. And we're going to come back to masterminds, because I think tribe is an important conversation we need to have to really reinforce the power of masterminds. I was reading your bio, and I'm going to read it right here, this one line I loved. It says, Ronan believes we've lost our connection to a tribe, a community that will help you solve your problems and accelerate your learning. He believes that there is more value in making real peer-to-peer connections than paying external contractors who have no vested interest in your success. And I'll take that one step further. It's amazing. There's a segment there that you say peer-to-peer connections versus external contractors. I'll take that to even coaches or gurus out there, because we're all looking for that quick fix. And sometimes we say, oh, I'm going to look to Gary Vee. I'm going to look to the James Altuchers, the Simon Sineks of the world, and they're going to solve all of my problems because they've figured out every solution for every question in the world, which isn't true. I know I'm over-dramatizing that a little bit, but it's amazing to me how we discount the value of each other's voice, peer-to-peer. And we are looking for the person that has all the answers when the answers sometimes are right in front of us. How can we really start listening to each other on that peer-to-peer level so that we can dive in and get the answers we want?
It's a really good question. You're right about the gurus and the Gary Vee's this world. People think that he's got a lot of good ideas, but there are millions of good ideas out there on the internet, and sometimes it's putting context to content. So finding someone that is just 1 or 2 levels ahead of you, so they're still your peers, and finding, okay, well, they've just figured this bit out. Cool. If they can tell me those steps, that's relevant, that's immediate, that's something that's just done something that I want to do. So connecting with your peers also helps you understand all the challenges that they're facing, like I said earlier, that you're facing as well. And there used to be, obviously, we're hardwired to be around people. That's in our DNA. That's what we know, to be in that sort of village and that tribe, and to connect with people. And isolating, being a small business owner, if you're on your computer all day, you miss those social interactions, those connections, and those peers that are trying to figure out what you figure out. And it does go back to that Napoleon Hill thing, where 2 minds come together and create that third mind, and you do improve when you got there. I like to look at it, a mastermind group, as a little bit like a balloon with air in there, and it's a certain size, and this information comes in, and definitely the confidence comes in, and you expand that balloon. Yeah. And then you go away from the group, and you might hit a bad day the day after. Something happens, you lose a customer, or something breaks, IT, your website goes down, and you deflate a little bit, but you're always bigger than when you went into that meeting and that group, and your knowledge and your confidence was expanded a bit. So I like to use the balloon analogy quite often, that we are trying to always expand that balloon. And that tribe, the people that support you. And it's not always information. Sometimes it's just that you've got this, you could do that. It's that emotional support that we lack as much as information. So it's a combination of the two.
Wow, that's really powerful. You put to words something that I've been wrestling for a while in this influencer economy that everyone's calling it, whether you're a podcaster, whether you're a video YouTube star, whether you're a small business owner in the next unicorn business startup. It seems like we always look at each other and we envy what they have. We are consuming their story from an outside perspective, but that context to content, those were the words that you used. That right there unlocks a lot. Having the context behind the content and being able to go deeper into the story to get those answers. And that's what masterminds and that peer-to-peer connection does, is it allows you to go behind the veil that so many people aren't really willing to open and be completely vulnerable. Tell us a little bit more about vulnerability, because this seems like it's the foundation of community. It's the foundation of finding true tribe, and it's critical mass for masterminds being as beneficial and as robust in their impact into our lives as entrepreneurs. That vulnerability is really an unlocking place for us to truly step into getting the answers we want and finding the true context to the content we're consuming.
Yes, exactly. You mentioned it earlier, and until you asked me about, what am I struggling with? And until you can admit that and say, actually, I haven't got it all figured out. I am struggling with this, or this just isn't working for me. Until you can do that, then you're not going to grow. And that is being, opening up and having some kind of honesty somewhere where you admit to people that I haven't got it all figured out. Because we haven't. So doing that is a very integral part of growing. And you're right. There is this terrible misnomer now that everyone else has got figured out except us, and therefore we feel like a failure. And we are always missing that context between the content out there. And I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I saw this blog post where this guy talked about he'd started a new business and he got, I think it was 1,000 signups pre-launch, and then I asked him a couple of other questions. He was on this sort of forum, and they admitted that he'd had another blog that had been going for 3 or 4 years. So right. He had a following and an audience, but that wasn't mentioned in this post. So everyone reading that thinks, well, if I don't get 1,000 people on pre-registered for my launch, I feel like a failure. Because there wasn't that context to the content, and you've probably heard the Derek Sivers quote is that if information was the answer, we'd all have perfect abs and be multi-millionaires.
Yes.
So it is the context around the content, because we live in this information age now where there is content everywhere. You can get a blog post, you can get a YouTube video, how to, white paper, doesn't matter. But applying that to yourself and adding that context and flesh around it is where people are missing the dots.
So good. And I've experienced that, where I see the successes of others and I expect the same results that they've gotten without knowing the full story behind it. Everyone hears about this rock star in podcasting, and they're like, oh, they got 1 billion followers and 1 million listens within the first 10 seconds of launching. And you find out, well, that, like in the case that you shared, that the guy had a blog before it and he had 2 billion followers. And so his content was consumed because of that backstory that's untold. I want to go deeper into tribe now, in the context of finding the right tribe for yourself. And specifically masterminds, because if you're already isolated, if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner and you're already feeling alone, so often you don't even know where to start. You just are buried by fear. You're buried by knowledge gap, where you don't have the full knowledge to know even what next step to take, or to find a group or find a tribe to connect with. So how in the world is somebody who is already feeling isolated, already feeling alone, already feeling like maybe they don't measure up, how are they able to find this tribe or find this mastermind group that they can really engage with if they don't even know where to start? So how do they start, I guess is the question.
That's a good question. Yeah, I think everyone's different. What I always say is that all your desires are on the other side of your fears. So you talked about people being potentially a little bit sort of scared.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's the same as starting a business. A lot of people are scared too and don't, and the other ones do overcome that. Then you find that you don't understand marketing, and then you try it, and it gets easier. You understand that you'd like to start a podcast, but you're nervous about speaking, and then you start one and go, well, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. This is actually quite fun. So all of those things happen only when you're ready to take that step forward and overcome your fear. How individually people do that, I don't know. Some people never overcome certain fears. It's only when you can actually step forward and say, my desire is stronger than my fear. So my desire to reach out and get some help is stronger than my fear of that. Will you actually then sort of push forward and do that? And it could be something as simple as you start your own mastermind group. You look around in your group. You mentioned sort of things like BNI, and networking. Most people that start business and been in business a little while realize that they've actually got quite a good network. And often we dismiss that and move on to the next new customer or next new person to meet. And you take a step back and say, who do I already know? Or who do I know that can introduce me to someone? So creating and cultivating those network, I think if you looked around, you would probably almost find a mastermind right there. It could even be your suppliers.
Yeah.
You often have a good relationship with your suppliers. So they're not competitors. Reach out and it could be suppliers. So I think if people just took a pen and paper and they sat down for an hour or half an hour, they could probably find 4 or 5 people that they could reach out to and potentially start their own little mastermind.
I love that because often we're looking for some magic, like all-inspiring answer. And in the simplicity of what you just said, there's a lot of power to leverage what you already have instead of trying to reinvent the networks you're already in or try to find something that you don't know exists, where to find it. But I just love that because you're leveraging the relationships, friendships, the network you already have, the thing that already is sustaining or building your business to go deeper and to get to that next level. I know you're super passionate about the message of leveraging. How can we leverage our talents or our abilities, our networks, or whatever it is we're trying to do? How can we use that as an asset to us, that power of leveraging?
Yeah, leveraging is the absolute key to business. And I think I talk about this all the time in the masterminds, and I try and question people around their leverage, because if you're trying to get one new customer, then one new customer, then one new customer, most businesses tend to close, not because they don't have a good idea, not because they don't have good service, but the business owner just runs out of energy because initially you do have to do all the other things, to wear all those other hats. So if you can find someone else that can give you 5 customers, then you can leverage their database and those relationships. That's what you should be looking for wherever possible. How can I collaborate with people? How can I work with other people? How can we make this nice and easy? How can we leverage what we already know, which is the masterminds? How can we leverage someone else's database and cross-promote? And that's where that's the true power of business, is if you can leverage and you can affiliate, anything like that, where you can get a steady stream of people coming into your ecosystem that you haven't got to go out and, because I hate the word hustle. If you look up the word hustle, it's a terrible definition.
I hate hustle
if
too.
You can find those people, then business becomes so much easier. And you'll notice that a lot of the smart business people, that's what they do. They're looking for networks and leverage rather than thinking that they can do it all themselves.
So it's really moving between the mindset of one-to-one to one-to-many. How can I build out a web versus a single line from point to point to point?
Yeah, and you see smart companies do it all the time. I got a wine subscription, and in that wine subscription, there's 4 or 5 adverts with a discount for something else.
Yeah.
So these are the people who are leveraging that wine company and saying, what does it cost to put my flyer into your box? And it's similar sort of market, and they'll do that. So finding innovative ways to say, how can I get in front of my ideal customer using somebody else that already has a database of those people, then that's the fast route rather than you trying to do it all yourself.
That's really, really, really powerful mindset shift right there. That will make business so much easier to do. I want to pivot here and talk specifically about accountability. And am I saying that right? Accountability?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Want to make sure. And your philosophy of masterminding and how you work in a virtual mastermind space. So tell us a little bit about the business itself.
Well, the concept was to build a platform where people could connect from all over the world. So you do get that true diversity of thought, of ideas, of different people that have got different original backgrounds. We're all speaking English, so that helps. But there are a lot of nuances between how Australians think. I'm originally from the UK and how the US. We've got different sort of values, but we speak enough of a common language to come together as that sort of tribe.
Yeah. So
that was the idea that your evening is my morning. So again, we live in this economy now where the old rules of 9 to 5 don't quite apply anymore. So if you can join a mastermind in the evening and someone's in the morning, that's still a good sort of fit for people around the lifestyle that they've built and the timing and everything. So the idea was to create this platform where people can connect and can help each other from all over the world and just create that true sort of mastermind sort of ethos.
So with sorry, go ahead.
And it's been a challenge to find. I've got to be totally honest. It's been a challenge to find enough people that want to join a mastermind internationally and put them all together. As you said, not everyone sort of heard the mastermind concept, but I think when they do hear it, it becomes that powerful thing that it's a bit like buying a car that as soon as you buy one, you see them all the time. So you go, oh, I didn't know that it existed, and then you do, and you see them all the time.
Yeah, and for you, what you're offering is a mastermind group. It's not the technology behind doing virtual masterminds, right?
That's correct. So I do two things. So I connect people into mastermind groups that I facilitate, but I also understand that subject matter experts have a really hard time differentiate themselves from other people. And I'll give you an example. There's a whole new craze now for virtual CFOs. And I'm creating several of those to teach them how to run masterminds to get the next people through that shortcut for people that want to start a virtual CFO, and they run their own mastermind to show them how to do that.
Oh, wow.
And again, that's where masterminds come in different from, you can do it for subject matter experts and you can do it in a specific niche. And the difference between a mastermind and a course is that you do get that access to the person, and you get their deeper knowledge, and also the people in that sort of group, as I talked about, those cross ideas, and you add that context to the content. So unlike a course where most people dump their IP down in a course and say, go and consume that, a mastermind around a specific topic allows people to ask questions, to fill in the gaps, to be held accountable, and get them to the end of that information section. Whereas in a course, a lot of people start with every intention and they drop off and stop consuming. So that's the two strings to the mastermind, where you can actually teach other people as well how to do a certain sort of niche thing.
Yeah. And one of the cool things that I saw was that when I went to your website, you do have different programs, and you have a little quiz there. I took the quiz and I came out as a bull. And so tell us a little bit about getting through the process, not getting through, but your process of onboarding someone, and how, if they're listening and going, I've tried to find a mastermind, I'm still not quite sure to where I should look, and I don't really want to leverage my network because whatever reason they have. So what's the process like for them if they come in and want to start working with you to have that experience?
We do try and group them into two different sections. You're right. As I said, it's still a little bit of trial and error. There's no magic science to say you can take as many quizzes or I can ask you as many questions about your business, still not be a good fit. But we do try and sort of match them to a certain level. And because as you said earlier, everyone wants a sort of rock star in the group. There has to be a plus, minus, and equal effect in a mastermind group. You have to be ahead of the pluses. That there needs to be some people that are ahead of others in certain sections. There's that equal where your peers. So it's not having someone like Gary Vee and someone who's in their second year of business, because there's no value exchange.
Yeah.
There's just the gap is too big between what Gary Vee knows and what the other person knows, and because even the information that Gary Vee will be giving them would be intimidating and above where they're at, and vice versa, that new person is unlikely to give Gary Vee any exchange of value. So you do have to a certain level match people within a range of where they're at, so that the gap isn't too big.
I think that's really interesting, because as you shared that, I just had this revelation that as you grow in a mastermind, so do, anyone who really truly engages, they're growing too. And so you're always increasing that level of knowledge and a level of accountability, the level of just troubleshooting and vulnerability. How do you find that the sustainability of being a part of one mastermind for a long period of time works, or do you feel like there comes a point in which you need to pivot and find a new peer group? How does that work?
It's a good question. Some people do grow faster than others and will need to sort of move on. Sometimes masterminds run their sort of natural course, and people say, okay, I've improved in what I do, and it's sort of run its course, and it's run out of a bit of energy, momentum. Sometimes masterminds group, I know some people have been in them for over a decade.
Wow.
And they're still going strong, where they just had that core group of 4 or 5 people, and they probably don't meet as frequently, probably about once a month, and still do that. But yes, everybody's different. People take out, often you take out what you put in, like in life anyway. If you're putting in so much, then you get so much out. I often think people think, you talked about the silver bullet. I think people sometimes also think mastermind's a silver bullet, where they'll go into a group and all of a sudden they'll either learn everything, or they'll pick everybody's brains, or everyone else will help them with what they want. And it doesn't always work that way. You've got to be, in business full stop anyway, you've got to be that giver. You've got to go in with the mindset of you genuinely like helping other people. And I think that's the key thing that I tend to look for in masterminds, is the people that genuinely like helping other people, because they know it'll come back in spades. So when you've got that mentality of that you absolutely love seeing other people succeed, you're rooting for them, you genuinely do that, then that all comes back to you.
So it's serve first. Start with serving, and in that you're also going to have other people that are serving you for the common good.
Yeah, every successful business owner, I know, has that serve first mentality. How can I help you? What can I do for you? And genuinely have that. And those are the people that you see are great networkers, have great friends, and when the time comes for them to call in a favor, absolutely everybody wants to help them, and that's how that serve first really is a great motto to have in business, because I think it's one of the key things that define people and really attracts the right amount of people, because they genuinely see that giving nature. So
good. You have a giveaway that you're doing, so people can go deeper. Tell us about that giveaway and how they can find it.
Yes, well, I went to see Simon Sinek in one of the big gurus. I went to see Simon Sinek about 18 months ago, and he shared his why formula. You can break it down, and again, it adds some really good context to the content. So I'm happy to give that away, because I think some people tend to lose focus of why they're in business, and it's not just about money. Money is a great way of keeping score, but ultimately we're there to serve our customers, and we absolutely love what we do. When you speak to genuine, passionate business owners, that's it. And sometimes they get a little bit sort of lost on the way. So happy to share this Simon Sinek formula of just breaking that down so that you are crystal clear on your message, and you've got that there, and you can play around with it. And he always recommends that you have it in front of you, so every day you understand your why are you in business, why are you there, and you communicate that to everybody, your customers, your staff, and yourself, and then you all buy into that message because it's just so true and it resonates with you.
Cool. So we'll have that in the show notes. So to make sure to check that out and get that, it's super cool. Before we wrap up this final moment of our second segment, I want to make sure that people remember how they can find and connect again. So how can they find and connect with you?
LinkedIn, I'm Ronan, Leonard, the Mastermind Guy.
You can find that link in the episode notes. In a moment, we'll be back for rapid fire questions. We want to thank our sponsor for today's episode, Opportunity in China, for sponsoring today's episode. They're doing really cool stuff. Here's a little bit more about what they're doing.
At the dawn of the 19th century, forward-thinking people moved to the commercial centers of Europe. Moving into the 20th century, America welcomed millions into the land of freedom and opportunity. It is now the 21st century. Many of the successes and fortunes of our generations will be made in China. To learn how you can seize opportunity in China, follow the Opportunity in China podcast. The Opportunity in China podcast is available anywhere podcasts are streamed, or you can visit our website at opportunityinchina.com.
We are back with Ronan and rapid fire questions. Are you ready for rapid fire questions?
I'm indeed, Michael.
What is one tip you'd give someone with a big idea and dream and they don't know where to start?
Well, you just start with something. Big ideas and dreams end up from small steps consistently. So habit, so just start somewhere.
What is one change you'd like to see in the world?
I'd like to see people connect more.
What do you want your legacy to be?
That I've passed on knowledge to other people, that we've shared more knowledge and ideas.
And where do you find inspiration?
I read a lot of books, so I find a lot of inspiration from reading books about other amazing people doing great things.
Well, that's a perfect segue. The next question is, what is one book you think every dreamer or entrepreneur should read, and why?
I'm really fascinated by Sapiens. And
okay.
He talks about the anthropology of people and how we got to where we are, and basically how our whole structure around us is really just a set of rules we made up and we couldn't change them.
How do you define success?
I look at it more in a happiness mode. I think if you are happy, then you are successful. I think chasing money is a false economy, and success is about how happy you are.
What is one habit you find helpful in your life as an entrepreneur?
I meditate every day for the last 3 and a bit years, so meditation.
Now, how do you start and finish your day?
I start by writing out my top 3 goals for the day, and I've got a gratitude journal, and I finish up with the gratitude journal as well about what went well today in my 5-minute journal.
If you weren't doing what you're doing today, what do you think you'd be doing?
I have no idea.
Okay. And the final rapid fire question is, what is one dream you are still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
Dream to fulfill. My idea is to retire to Italy, so that's my dream.
That's a beautiful dream. I love that for sure. As we wrap up today's episode, we always like to leave our guests have a final thought. So what's your final thought for our listeners today?
Stay curious and challenge almost everything. Challenge what you read in the newspapers, challenge what people tell you. And I think curiosity, I think the most successful entrepreneurs tend to be really, really curious people. So try and look for that wanderlust and be curious and question everything.
I love that for sure. Ronan, thanks so much for taking time out, being on the podcast. I am a big fan of Masterminds. I'm a big fan of yours, and I really appreciate your time today with us.
Michael, thank you for having me a guest on the show. I've really enjoyed getting to know you better as well as you've asked me these questions.
Once again, we want to thank Ronan Leonard for taking time out to be on the podcast today. You can find all of his links, including the free giveaway that he's giving, in the episode notes. Our episode today has been sponsored by OpportunityInChina.com. They're doing some cool stuff. Make sure you check out what they're doing at OpportunityInChina.com. And also, head on over to wherever you like to listen to podcasts and check out their podcast. Simply search for Opportunity in China. Take a listen. I think you're going to love it. Thank you for tuning into today's episode. It means the world to us that you would listen, and I hope it's encouraged you to take some steps small steps, big steps, but any steps to move that dream and idea that you have, that thing that's been sitting on the shelf that you've been waiting to do for one day, that it helps move that forward and begins to encourage you to step out and take the risks, take the chance, and believe in your dreams and go out and do them. So today, I encourage you, go out there, do something to make those ideas and dreams become a reality.
Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps. Vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.